We'll get into a quick little recap of, I believe, week 11. We have a couple games that we want to talk about. First, we'll talk, since I got burned by it, the Cleveland and Buffalo game that got moved to Ford Field. I obviously took the under in that game as the snowstorm was approaching. And then I took it really early, thinking I was really smart. Got nipped in the butt, moved to Ford Field indoor stadium. Bet was not refunded. The game ends 23-31 in favor of Buffalo. The under was pretty much done at half. The one thing I do want to talk about this before I hand it over to you, Buffalo kicked 6 field goals in this game, or I believe, 6 Tyler Bass field goals in this game. So that 8-point differential in this game could easily have been 30 points, so I people are looking at this game just from afar and just looking at the box score and be like, wow, Buffalo, 31-23 to Cleveland. Like, that was kind of close. This game was never close. Buffalo easily, they easily could have put up 60 points if 3 of those field goals, are turning into touchdowns. So I just think it's worthy to note that Buffalo really outplayed them this week. And, Cleveland's desperately needing a win. They look bad and they're kind of running out of time. I know they get Watson back soon, but they're running out of time to turn the season around.
Yeah, for sure. I do believe Cleveland also scored a late touchdown in that game in the final 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
To really make that score look closer than it was. But like you said, Buffalo by far the superior team in that game. Yeah, you're under. I can't believe they didn't refund you on that, but
yeah,
it was
DraftKings stayed true to it. They every other sports book, and obviously I saw all the bookies took it off, but every other sports book besides DraftKings said they are refunding. DraftKings came out with a tweet and said we will not be refunding for this game. So
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and the adjusted over, I think the new one was at 50, 51 or 50 and a half, and that hit. Obviously, I should have just hedged it and taken the over, but there's just too much of a point gap for me to hedge.
Exactly. Then you lose them both. And
right.
Yeah, I could never get myself to do that. But yeah, like you said, I mean, Cleveland, they're struggling. And I like Cleveland. I really do. I'm kind of shocked that they're doing this poorly. They've kind of self-imploded a few different times this season. Let a couple of wins slip away from them. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo dominated. I do think it's probably too late for Cleveland. They are in a tough division where, as we just mentioned, Pittsburgh's getting better, and Cincy and Baltimore are borderline juggernauts. So we'll see if Watson can come back and maybe bring him on a win streak to end the season. But I think it's too little too late for Cleveland.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it will be interesting when Watson comes back, what will happen in regards to that. So moving on, we have a quick game, the really close game of the weekend. We had the Eagles versus the Colts. Philly wins this one 17-16 with a late QB draw from Hurts. Honestly, Indy was up all game. They kind of were dominating all game, and then 14 points scored by Philly in the fourth quarter was just too much for them. What are your thoughts on that one? And is Indy on the verge of possibly having a wild card case? And are the Eagles not as good as we think they are?
Yeah, so that game kind of hurt me. We'll get into it with the recap from last week, but like you said, Indy had that game the entire time. You could kind of see the writing on the wall, though. Especially when it got down to a 6-point game, you could just kind of see that Philly was going to go in there and get that last touchdown and win the football game.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like we mentioned, I think Indy's just playing loose, has nothing to lose. So they're playing some good football right now. And I'll get more into this a little bit later, but I do think Philly they're a very good football team, but I think they could be in a little bit of trouble moving forward.
I completely agree. And, we were talking about Indy last week. They had that bad loss to the Commanders. Now they kind of struggled a little bit this week. So that's 2 weeks in a row now of Philly not really looking like Philly. So obviously they're still great. Hurts is still playing amazing. They have, their offense is doing really well. Their defensive line's not bad. But I'm still waiting for them to have that bounce back from the Commanders game, because last week was not it. And, they're going to need to, if they want to keep being in the Super Bowl talks. Obviously it's still pretty early when we were talking Super Bowl, but they will, they're going to have a bounce back eventually. So, and they have a big game this week. We'll get into in a sec.
Yep.
One of the most boring games until the final 17 seconds, the Jets and the Patriots. Game was deadlocked 3-3. And then a late punt and return touchdown by the Pats put them up 10-3. What are your thoughts on this game? I'll quickly give you a stat to think about here. Zach Wilson went 9 for 22 for 72 yards. Obviously, he's still young. But is it time for them to either say you have to do something here and get benched, or are they just going to ride with him if it's too late in the season? I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest storyline, obviously, from this game was the post-game interview with Zach Wilson, where he said he didn't feel like his offense let his defense down, which as a young guy, you just gotta, even if you feel that way, you just gotta be humble and say, yeah, we let him down. We need to do more and give our defense a chance to win this football game. It actually did just come out that he is being benched this week. So
Okay.
he will not be starting against Chicago. So I don't know. That's probably just sending a message to him. Wouldn't shock me if he comes back and starts the following week. But yeah, as far as that game goes, I mean, like you said, super boring. I'm extremely happy with the way it ended. I think I mentioned last week, I do have a New York Jets under 2 division wins future. So
Right.
like I said, I'm just hoping for the push at that point, and that was a pretty big punt return to at least keep it alive for another day.
Yeah. And, that probably had a lot of people, pissed off in that last play of the game. I had the under in that game, was pretty happy. And, I kind of knew, it's really hard to beat a team twice. Somehow the Pats did it, but I knew that game was going to be close and low scoring. So I was kind of happy that one of my predictions actually came true.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take this one away. Detroit Giants, really big win for Detroit. Go ahead.
Yeah, Detroit just looked dominant from start to finish. New York, I do think they were looking ahead to Dallas a little bit, but they just kind of look sloppy. I mean, Daniel Jones has had as many interceptions against Detroit as he's had all season.
Right.
Graham Gano couldn't make a kick, which I know the wind was pretty strong there, but in my opinion, one of the best kickers in the NFL, and just looked horrible. So yeah, I mean, I was happy, obviously. I know we were both on the under in that game, which it got there, or the over got there pretty late in the game. The under never really looked good, but disappointed in that. But very happy for our Lions to go out there and get a road victory, which they don't do very often, especially back to back. So
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, that over in that game, I was kind of hanging on. It was one of those overs, or the under in that game. It was one of those unders where you kind of think it's alive throughout like it's never truly dead. And you're like, oh, there's still a chance. Those are the worst, just when you don't know right away, it's leaning you on, and then fourth quarter happens and it just gets blown out of the water.
yeah.
But that's just kind of how that was. Detroit, honestly, and again, I'm kind of weary on Detroit just because, as a Detroit fan, we hear this all the time. A couple good weeks, we start thinking we're the best team in the world. But we honestly don't look that bad. Like, we have a lot of positive things going for us. And I don't know if we can do much this season. It's still a really close race, but for the future, and I know this is what we always say, the future, next season, it's been the next season for the past 20 seasons, but
Right.
I just really like our squad right now. And I think if we can get a couple more key ads, especially when it comes to drafting in that pick from the Rams, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Detroit does. We talked about it briefly. We won't have to say too much about this one, but Dallas and Minnesota, Dallas absolutely tears them up. 40-3 is the final of that game. The combo of Zeke and Pollard having 2 touchdowns each. Dak looked pretty good. Micah Parsons had a strip sack on the third play of the game. That game was just out of hand at the beginning. Dallas just looked flat out better. And Minnesota struggled. And Minnesota is always this team. And I don't know if they're saying it, but we are kind of saying, like, why aren't they getting respect? Blah, 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 blah. And it turns out this is why, because when they play a good team, they lost to Philly early in the year by 24 points, whatever it was. They just lose to Dallas by 37. You can't gain respect if you can't play the good teams close. Like, I don't care if you win or lose, but this game wasn't even competitive. So it's hard for me to think of the Vikings moving forward. And I think for the rest of the season, they're going to be getting this treatment of them, oh, you're 8-2, whatever they are. But yeah, I mean, every time you play a good team, you get blown out.
Yeah.
So kind of went on a little rant there, but Warrior, I mean, I know you're a huge Cowboys. If you want to get into that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch this show, if you watch my other show, Better in Green Pod with Cooper Sports, or if you read my article with Cooper Sports, I was all over the Cowboys last week. So honestly, I was just extremely happy to sit back on the couch, not sweat for really a second in that game, and just enjoy for one. So really nice. I also player of the year plus 600 ticket. So when he got injured there for a little bit, I was nervous, but glad he bounced back. Glad he played pretty well. And yeah, that was just that for me. That was probably the greatest game of the season, just because it went in my favor in every possible way, and I really didn't have to sweat out anything.
Yeah, that's very nice. And I didn't take your advice last week, and I didn't place any futures on Dallas, but kind of biting myself in the butt for that one. And yeah, that Dallas team is scary. Quickly and lastly on the recaps, the Chiefs and the Chargers. We thought this was gonna be a really interesting game. It turned out to be. I was really high on the Chiefs. I know you liked the Chargers. Unfortunately, the Chiefs win, but the Chargers do cover, so it's kind of a win-win on both our hands. What are your thoughts on this game? And are the Chargers possibly the best 5-5 team in the league, especially knowing that all their offensive weapons are either dinged up or are out? So I'm interested to see once they get a truly healthy Keenan Allen, if they get Mike Williams back, because Josh Palmer has done great this year, and I just really think that they're 5-5, but they are very good for 5-5.
Yeah, this game went about exactly how I expected, back and forth with the Chiefs pulling out a great victory late. I am very high on the Chargers too. I think they just have too many offensive pieces around them when healthy. They have been probably the most banged up team this season, which accounts to that 5-5 record. But I think they'll be a play on team moving forward if they can keep Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Eckler, all their guys on the field. They'll get Joey Bosa back at some point, make their defense a little bit better. Yeah, I was happy that LA got the cover, but man, I am tired of Mahomes pulling this late game heroics every single week.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it. And 1 second here.
Yep.
I'm just gonna pause. And yeah, Josh, between Josh Palmer and the other weapons on this Charger team, I think they can really surprise a lot of people. And I'm excited for the rest of the season to see if they can really get into that spot. It doesn't look like they're going to be in a divisional lead, but they can really get into that wild card. And we'll get into the wild card briefly later in this podcast, but it's really the AFC is really a gauntlet, and I'm just really interested to see what will happen in this game, or for their season. So quickly, that's pretty much our end of our wrap. I have 4 extra little tidbits of last week. So the Rams continue to lose. They're now the worst record of a defending Super Bowl champ ever. I believe they are 3 and whatever. They look really bad. And then when it comes to the NFC East, probably the best division in football, if not the AFC East. But the NFC East, the Commanders are quietly now at 5-6. Taylor Heinicke is doing really well, and the Commanders continue to win. And they very much have put themselves in a really good spot at this wild card. And then 2 more teams. 49ers looked legit on Monday night. They always seem to find a way in the playoffs. Even if that wild card, they seem like they're always making it to the divisional championship game. I think they're really scary this year, especially with the addition of Christian McCaffrey. Yep. Jimmy G, he's just a winning quarterback. So I think they would be an interesting team to keep an eye out to see if they continue to emerge out of the NFC, because the NFC, again, we have this, there's really no one on top. Everyone's really close. Actually in both divisions, both AFC and NFC, it's extremely close race, but the 49ers they kind of have that wow factor right now. They had that factor that Philly had early in the season, and now the Niners are starting to hit this late in the season, and it's a little scary. And then quickly, last game, Raiders Broncos, the battle. I called this one the battle of the best that never was this year. So the Raiders, we thought, wow, with Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, like this team has star potential, and kind of the same with the Broncos, new head coach, supposed to be this great offensive mind. They have Russell Wilson, and both teams have just completely failed all expectations. But the Raiders squeezed this one out in OT. So I guess they have the title of the best that never was this year. But yeah, those teams really a big disappointment. I know I just kind of went on a little rant there. Do you have anything to add about these extra games before we get into the preview of this week?
Yeah. One quick correction. I think you said Commanders are 5-6. I believe they're actually 6-5 now.
Oh
So
God, even better.
yeah, I do believe that entire division has a winning record.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It could be 5.
No, you are right. Yeah, I have 6-5 right here.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, a winning record for that entire division. Pretty impressive. Heineke way better than Carson Wentz. And then yeah, San Fran. I mean, they look phenomenal. I think Trey Lance's injury was. I was thinking about this the other day. Probably the best thing that happened to San Francisco this year. The worst thing that happened to Seattle, because I think if Trey Lance stays healthy, Seattle probably waltzes to the NFC West division title there, which would have shocked everybody. So yeah, I think, yeah, I'm pretty high on San Francisco as well. They just look completely dominant both sides of the football.
Yeah, and going back to that Jimmy G and Trey Lance situation, at what time will Jimmy G finally get picked up to be a starting quarterback somewhere? He's not great. His stats aren't like blowing you out of the waters, but the guy knows how to win. All he does is win. That's just what he does. He's not going to throw for 300 yards. He'll probably make a bad interception, but he just finds a way to win. And I know he's around good teams, so I'm not going to put that all on him. But I personally didn't like the decision to start Trey Lance this year. I thought he was still too young. Just another year, give him another year to just learn a little bit. And as other NFL teams, why did he not pick up a Jimmy G? If you're the Jets, why don't you pick up Jimmy G? If you're, someone else has a really young quarterback, or if you're a team that's completely full, like they're ready to go just besides a quarterback position, Jimmy G could be that guy that sneaks you into playoff contention or possibly 100%. Super Bowl contention. So
100%.
I don't know how many more years we're going to go through with this. I kind of feel bad for the guy, but I don't, just because he's a beautiful human being. So,
right.
Obviously he has enough going for him.
He's
so
doing
I'm not going to feel
fine.
too bad. Right. I'm not going to feel too bad about him, but yeah, that's just interesting. And again, I think his contract's up again this year. So,
I'll take him in Detroit.
Yeah, I'll take him Detroit. I probably, there's a lot of teams that he can go. Derek Carr, I don't know how long he's going to stay.
Yeah.
God knows what they're doing in Texas with the Houston like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a thing that we'll definitely have to keep our eye on for the next couple months.
Definitely.
So we've already previewed Thursday night and Monday night's game. So we'll get into this Sunday's game, Week 12's previews. We have, I believe, 4 games we have circled here, and then a couple other extras that we'll quickly add on. So these 4 games are big ones that we're really looking at. I'm going to go a little out of order here. Sorry for this, but I think the most exciting game of the weekend is the Bengals versus the Titans. A huge AFC matchup. The Titans, again, are kind of that team that I don't know how they keep winning, but they do. Kind of like the Commanders right now. I know that Commanders, they usually suck, but the Commanders right now are winning, and I don't know how. Kind of the same for the Titans, winning, and I don't know how. Offensively, they have Derrick Henry, but besides that, they're really missing key pieces on offense. Their defense plays really fast. They're really physical, but they just find ways to win these close games. And then Cincy, defending Super Bowl runners up, they started off the season horribly, and now they have kind of put it together, figured it out. And Jamar Chase could possibly come back this week. I read. I'm going to guess it's going to be one more week, but it's going to be a really exciting game between 2 serious AFC contenders. What are your initial thoughts on this game, and what are you leaning?
Yeah, so I actually really love this game this week. It's my favorite game on the board. I apologize if I go long here, but I do have quite a bit, leaned quite a bit in both side and total in this game. So first of all, just cut to the chase. I do like Tennessee on the money line this week. They've been tested at home in the past 2 or 3 years with a lot of tough AFC matchups. They've gotten the Chiefs and the Bills, I believe, each the last 2 years. And they just always play these tight AFC games close, especially at home. Not only that, I do handicap spots, I think, a lot more than most people. and it's just a really bad spot for Cincinnati. They're coming off that game with Pittsburgh, where it was a close game. Obviously, division rivals, they do want to play pretty well within their division, obviously. And on deck, they have the Kansas City Chiefs coming to town, and that's going to be a huge AFC Championship rematch. It wouldn't shock me at all if they're looking forward to that game. Um, they're just going to want to prove that they won for a reason last year. So, in my opinion, bad spot for Cincinnati. Also, probably a bad matchup for Cincinnati as well. I think Tennessee can exploit them with Derrick Henry. So yeah, give me the Titans money line. I really like that play this week. And um, I also like Tennessee because you look at the best running back that Cincinnati's played against this season, Nick Chubb, kind of just ran all over them. Cleveland dominated that game. They won 32-13. And I see a very similar game this week, which kind of leads me to the over 42.5 as well. Like I said, 32-13 would get you to 45. It gets you over that total. Tennessee has actually scored 17 or more points, 9 out of 10 games that they've played this year. Cincinnati has scored 24 or more in 6 out of 10. And Cincinnati is 4-0-1 to the over in their last 5. So I think there's just too many playmakers on that Cincinnati offense. I think the Titans are going to be able to move the football with Derrick Henry and really just run it down their throats. And I don't see why this game doesn't go over the 42.5 pretty easily. So I really like the Titans, and I really like the over in this game.
Yeah, I liked your reasoning for those. I'm gonna split with you here. I also like the Titans. I just think they're the better team. Since he does have this star power opportunity, they have started to play better this year. But they're in a really tough spot. Easy to think about the Chiefs. I'm worried about that game more probably than excited for it. And then they just had a really close one to Pittsburgh. So I think they're in a funky spot. And then Tennessee, as I said, and as you kind of alluded to, they just find ways to win. They only have that rushing game. And if what you say is true about Cincy's D, I could see Derrick Henry hopefully going for multi touchdowns over 100 yards.
Yep.
Where I am going to defer here, for some reason, and I don't know why, I don't have the reasonings like you do for this one, but I kind of am leaning the under in this game. For me, it's one of those games that it just makes too much sense to take the over. I think with Cincy is just outscoring everyone and putting up ridiculous numbers. Burrow's throwing 400 plus yards a game, multiple touchdowns. For me, the Titans obviously are a run defense team or a run offense team. They're slower paced. They have ability to eat up the clock. I just think that, if Tennessee wins this game, I'm thinking it's going to be a closer to like a 2017 type of game, or possibly even more than that. But in regards to the Tennessee spread, but I just think they're going to hold Cincy to a few touchdowns. And I don't know. I don't love it, but the under just makes sense to me because it doesn't make sense. And,
right.
I have a way where, I'll just start thinking in my head where, if I just am so up on one, then I'm like, what, why am I doing this? I have a terrible betting record. What if I just do the opposite? So that's my thought process on this one. Cause everything's, again, like you said, pointing towards this over.
Yeah.
I'm just going to lean the under in this game just cause it feels weird and it feels right.
The age old saying, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Right. The amount of times I had Sherlocks and then they ends up being the worst bet possible.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting game. It's not going to be a heavy unit play at all, just because it's so back and forth. But I do think that Tennessee is a pretty decent underdog money line in this game.
Yeah.
But also, so in my opinion, that's the biggest matchup on the week. We have an interesting game. As one would think at the beginning of the season would be a better matchup than it is. We have the Rams at the Chiefs. While the Rams are bad, and Kansas City is a 14.5 point favorite against the defending Super Bowl champs. I think that 14.5 point favorite ties this year's biggest spread. I don't believe we had a 17 point spread. I think that was last year. It could have been this year, 16.5 at Texans or something, but I think this is up there, if not the biggest, the second or third biggest spread, which is just mind blowing to me that defending Super Bowl champ is this much of a underdog. And again, me and you, I feel like we're on the same page with a spread that big. I am all over the Rams plus 14.5 here. McVay, for as much as he is, struggling right now, he's still a great coach. He's extremely smart. He's going to figure out something. Like, he has to figure out something. I know Cup's done for the season. I know Stafford's getting old, but they still have a great defense. It's just 14.5 just seems way too much in my opinion. And I think that might be a 2-unit play for me, taking the Rams over here plus 14.5.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I'm pretty big on the Rams this week. Yeah, just spread. I don't have the balls to go money line, but 14.5 is way too many. Like you said, for a defending Super Bowl champion, I don't care how bad they've looked. They still have Aaron Donald. They still have Jalen Ramsey. They're not going to have Cooper Kupp, and I don't even know if they'll have Stafford. He did suffer a second concussion in 3 weeks. But honestly, if they don't have Stafford, I almost like it even more. Kansas City's not going to have the film on. I can't think of the backup's name right now, but they're not going to have the film on him. I think McVay will game plan to kind of make it easy for this backup quarterback, who I know he's also quite mobile.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I have no idea who this little guy is, but he's a little speedster.
Yeah, he is. So yeah, I think they're gonna, game plan. If they have Stafford, I like it. If they don't, I almost like it even more. And like I said, with the Cincinnati game, the Chiefs are probably looking ahead. They probably think they can walk right in, get this win, and go get their revenge on Cincinnati next week. Also coming off of the tough Chargers Sunday night football game. So just a tiny bit of a short week for them. And, they always play the Chargers extremely tough, put everything they have into those games. So bad spot for Kansas City. A lot of points to give to a defending Super Bowl champion. So yeah, I really, really like the Rams this week. And I liked over early in the week, but I think I kind of lean the under at this point. I think Kansas City is just going to want to go in there and score enough points to get the job done. And I think the Rams are really going to slow down the tempo of the game. And I could see this being like a 20-10 type of football game.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree on the under as well in that game. Yeah, that should be interesting though. And I just think that's a little disrespectful to have 14.5 points. It could very well be a trap. But it's just a hard time seeing the Chiefs, winning by that many points.
Yeah.
We have another decent matchup. We'll finish off with, I think, the second best game, but we'll start right now. Tampa Bay Browns before we get into the Sunday night game. So Tampa, I said it a couple weeks ago. They had a bye last week. I said it, I think, on our first recording. I predicted Tampa would go on a little run here. They're currently on a 2-win streak after Tom Brady's 3 losses in a row for the first time in his career since 2001 or whatever it was. And we've seen this story from the Bucs before. It takes them a year just because they have so much turnover in the offseason, different players coming in, different O-line, different, wide receivers, defensive players. They have a lot of turmoil year to year. And every single year, especially their Super Bowl season, they started off that season like 3-3, 4-4, whatever it was. And then went on an 8-game win streak. So they're on the 2-game win streak right now. They are currently a 3.5-point favorite at Cleveland, I believe it is. I think they're going to continue this win streak. I think they're going to cover this game at 3.5, but this could also be a scenario, like you said, could be a double down on the money line for Tampa. Again, if you're just looking at Cleveland and be like, oh yeah, they, competed against Buffalo. They really, again, they could have lost that game by a lot. Cleveland has a lot of holes in their team. And I just think Tampa is kind of figuring out now. I still don't think they're good enough to even think of them as, a Super Bowl contender, because I think that's a way out of the question as of right now. But I can see this 2-game win streak turn into a 4 or 5-game win streak. And then it becomes later in the season, week 16, 17, where you're like, wow, this Tampa team might have figured it out. It might be in possibility of, a deep run in the playoffs. So I think Tampa's going to win this one pretty good. Again, that 3.5 is a trap a little bit. I hate that fish or that hook line, but it could be an opportunity for you to go on that strategy of doubling down on the money line.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head with everything you just said there. I couldn't have really said it better myself. I do like Tampa Bay. I think they're going on a run as well. They're them and Dallas are my 2 bet on teams at this point in the season. I am kind of kicking myself for not taking the -3 when it was available yesterday. So I would probably be looking at the 2-unit money line play for Tampa. And I also do think it could just be kind of an awkward spot for Cleveland with getting Deshaun Watson back the
Right.
following week. It's just it's a weird spot for Jacoby Brissett. It's kind of a weird spot for the team. Just we got to make it one more week, and we got our guy, our superstar, quote unquote, quarterback back. So that's just really weird spot for Cleveland. I love Tampa. Don't know if I can get there with the 3.5. I just struggle
Right.
to play 3.5 point lines, especially with a team who hasn't quite proven they can put up points in bunches this year. So yeah, I'd be looking at the 2-unit money line play on Tampa this week for sure.
Yeah, that should be an interesting game, and I am excited to see that. But yeah, great point about Watson. You know, they're going on a bye next week, and then they get him back on week 13 or 12, whatever it is. So or 14. That it is. It's a really interesting spot, as you said. Really weird situation for Jacoby Brissett. Because honestly, he hasn't been playing terribly. He's just, you know, their wide receiver core in Cleveland is very bad. You know, when you have, I know, big Michigan man, but when DPJ is your second wide receiver, he
Right.
is borderline fourth wide receiver on any other team in the league.
Right.
So it's an interesting spot for Jacoby because I don't think he's played terribly. And like we watched Deshaun Watson in the preseason and he looked horrendous. You know, when you step away from the game for whatever it is, 16 months now, like a lot changes. Your body takes time to adapt. I know he's starting to practice again, but yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, they're in a bad spot. So I think that even solidifies our bet of Tampa.
Yeah.
So the final game we have previewed, the Green Bay Philadelphia game, Sunday Night Football. This is an interesting game in my hand. As I said before, Philly having lost one 3 weeks ago, barely won last week. They're still, you know, they're in question right now, becoming frauds almost. I don't want to say it, but they still are, you know, 8-1, whatever their record is. So they're still a really good team. But if they can't bounce back one of these weeks, they're really going to be in a bad situation. And for Green Bay, they are completely running out of time right now to save this season. So I think with the prime time situation, and my opinion that if Rodgers can't figure this out, they will be calling for his head, calling for retirement, calling for all this stuff. So I think it's a great situation for Aaron Rodgers to come out and showcase that, hey, I am 38, however, 37 years old. I still have it. You know, the season isn't over yet. It's still a really close race. So I think it's a great spot for Green Bay in this game. And I think it's a really good spot for Philly too, to both showcase that, hey, we deserve to be here, or for Rodgers, hey, I'm still one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. So I think it should be a really interesting game. The over-under is at 46, and that scares me a little bit, but I am aware that Philly can score the points and the Packers defense does struggle a bit. So I'm leaning the over in this game just because of the prime time, the showcase. The Eagles need to get back on track. Rodgers needs to get back on track. I think it's a great situation for both teams to show that they should get respect. And if I did have to pick a side in this game, I would lean Packers +7. I would love if I could get 7.5. So I'll probably wait a little bit to see if I can get that line higher. But I think the Packers are going to make it competitive. I doubt they get the win this week, which will probably look bad on Rodgers and in Green Bay. But I think if they play competitive enough, I think they'll still have, you know, a chance to maybe make a case late in the season. But I think it's a really good situation for points in this game, and that's why I like the over.
Yeah, once again, we're almost completely in lockstep in this game. Lean the Packers as well. Can't get to the window with them though. I was pretty high on them in that Thursday night game against Tennessee last week, and they just really looked horrible. It was pretty much dead from the beginning. So I can't back the Packers again this week, but that would be my lean. And I do like the over quite a bit. As you mentioned, Philadelphia can put up points in bunches. And on the Green Bay side, I do believe this is going to be the best week as far as weapons goes for them this year. I do believe they're getting Romeo Dobbs back, who started becoming a relevant receiver for Rodgers right before his injury. Christian Watson has gone off each of the last 2 weeks. They do have Randall Cobb, the safety blanket, back, and Alan Lazard. I'm actually fairly high on Lazard. He did have some drops last week, but I think he kind of comes back to his normal he's kind of a safety blanket for Rodgers as well. Plus, Aaron Jones running the ball, AJ Dillon, Robert Tonyan. I mean, I do think Green Bay has a chance to compete with Philly this week. Wouldn't shock me if they won outright. I'm not going to go call for it, but would not shock me. And I do expect points from both sides in this game. I could see this both teams going in the 30s and just flying over this total.
Yeah, I think that's a great play there. And yeah, we'll get into it in a second, but on our favorite bets, but I think that could be up there with the favorite over of the week in my opinion, just because of each team's, they have to prove a lot this weekend, in my opinion. So I think it's a great situation for both squads. Do you have any other games to preview? I quickly want to touch on the Falcons and the Commanders. That's an interesting game. The Falcons, believe it or not, are 5-6 and are very much in the wild card race, which is unbelievable to me. They're one game behind the Bucks in the AFC South. Out of nowhere, they're kind of figuring out a little bit. They're still not great, and it's just they're an interesting team to me. And then the Commanders right now are one of the hottest teams behind Taylor Heineke and Chase Young. I think will be back. I don't want to say this week, but he's on the verge of being back. As soon as he gets back, that's a huge advancement on their defense. So
yeah,
I think that'll be an interesting game that people are kind of blowing under the rug just because it's two teams that have kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a huge feel for this game. I do think Washington probably comes in just a little overvalued in the betting market, which would lead me to taking the 4.5 points with Atlanta. I probably won't be betting it though. I lean the under as well, but yeah, I mean, I believe Atlanta's over under win total this year was set at 4.5 coming into the season. So they've blown that out of the water with half the season left to go, just about. And yeah, Washington just is it 4 out of the last 5 they've won or something like that? Just really getting hot behind Taylor Heineke. I think the team likes playing for him. Something's not right with Carson Wentz, obviously. I don't know if the team anywhere that he's played really gets behind him. So yeah, it's an interesting game. Wouldn't shock me if Washington wins this one by a field goal, Atlanta covers, but should be interesting to see both of these teams who have just kind of been overachieving. Should be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, it's one of the ones I'm kind of excited about. That kind of went under the radar. So it's another good game to at least keep our focus on this week. There's still games we haven't talked about, but we'll just pass those along via Twitter or whatnot on our picks and predictions on those games. But let's get into, since we're coming to that time of year, we're just over halfway of the NFL. It's time to maybe possibly start talking the playoff picture, maybe a couple of Super Bowl predictions. The MVP is getting a little tasty, and then the DPOY, Defensive Player of the Year, it could be something to add on this one. So we'll quickly start with this playoff picture real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this just because there's a lot that can happen, but I just wanted to reiterate how close we really are. So in the AFC, the Dolphins, Ravens, Titans, and Chiefs are the leaders in their divisions. The Dolphins are tied with the Bills with the same record. They just hold that tiebreaker currently. So when you're looking in that wild card game, the Bills are the number one wild card at 7-3, and then the Chargers are in my opinion, right now the lowest wild card at 5-5. But there are 5 teams in there between 2 losses. So, and obviously we'll get 3 wild card teams out of those. So honestly, a streak can go either way. There are 2 teams in there that also is shocking to me why they're in the wild card chase. But the Pats and the Jets are both at 6-4. And both currently right now would make the wild card. I guess it would be with Cincy too. But it's surprising that the New York Jets and the New England Patriots, for how bad they are playing, are still somehow 6-4 and are very much alive in this. And I know this kind of threw it a lot at you, but what are your thoughts on this AFC? And it's honestly a bloodbath. But again, a lot to happen. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Jets. I mean, I think going back to the whole Zach Wilson thing, with him getting benched this week, I think they're kind of dead in the water at this point. I think they're going to go on quite the losing streak. I would be looking to bet against them week in, week out going forward. I don't think the 6-4 record is even close to what their skill set is as a football team. So yeah, I don't think the Jets are going to be around towards the end. Patriots, they just have a good defense and a obviously great coach. So it wouldn't shock me if they're hanging around a few more weeks, but I don't think they make it. Um, I have division winners as Baltimore, Buffalo, Tennessee, Kansas City. I do think Buffalo comes out on top of that AFC East division there. And my wild cards, they're not too crazy. I like Miami, the Chargers, and Cincinnati. However, Cincinnati does have quite the tough schedule remaining. So who knows, New England or if Indy could go on a run, which I don't think they will. It could be pretty dicey for that last wild card spot.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And, the Chargers, as I said, are currently on the bottom of my list. I only did the top 9 teams on each side. But, at that 5-5 record, they're probably the best 5-5 team, at least this year, but probably in a long time. They just are been riddled by injuries. I think if they get everyone back, they could make a serious shot at, the number 1 wild card spot, or even flirting with the Chiefs at the top there.
Yeah.
So I think they're a dangerous team. Obviously, they're this year's sucked with injuries, but they're a dangerous team that if I can bet on them making the playoffs, I would put money on that for sure.
Yeah.
So on the other side, the NFC, we have 4 NFC East teams. Eagles obviously are the division leaders at 8-1. We have the Cowboys, who are the number 1 wild card, tied with the Giants at 7-3. And then the Commanders are the 8th best team in the NFC at 6-5. So that's 4 teams from the same conference, all in playoff pictures right now. Obviously, they had to play each other at least a couple more times, so they'll kind of beat each other up a little bit. But I've never seen a division that stacked and in the playoff race as much as that division. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then the other teams we have, obviously the Vikings, the Bucks, and the Niners are the other division leaders. And we have the Seahawks sitting at 6-4, and then the Falcons in at 5-6 to round off the top 9 in the NFC. The NFC is in my opinion, it's much more. They're extremely close, but the NFC I think has many more teams in contention for actual division winners. I think the AFC division right now, besides the Bills and the Pats, the division winners are pretty much. I don't see those changing that much, but. If the Eagles are only 1 win ahead of the Cowboys and the Giants, they're 2 wins ahead. Sorry. The Vikings are tough. The Lions could get into this wild card at 4-7 right now. Like they're 1 game behind the Falcons. Like there's a lot that can happen, and I'm not making complete sense here, but we have a lot to, this playoff picture is going to change quite a bit, but I just think it's important to note that the NFC East is something special this year.
Yeah, for sure. Touching on that NFC East, it is probably going to get blown up here in the next few weeks. The Giants are in a pretty odd scheduling spot. They're at Dallas on Thanksgiving tomorrow. They then come home. They play Washington at home, Philly at home. Then they're on the road against Washington again. So 4 straight divisional games for the Giants. And that's really going to sort out this division, I think. Like you said, there's still multiple possibilities of where that division could wind up. Yeah, I think Minnesota has the North locked up. Like we kind of mentioned, we think Detroit's going to lose this week. We think Green Bay is going to lose this week, and we think Minnesota is going to win. So that's going to all, if we're right there, that's going to all but lock up the North for Minnesota. I actually do think Dallas edges out Philly for the division.
Okay.
I think Dallas might only lose 1 more game this season. I do think they beat Philly in their, I believe it's week 17 matchup, which would then be 1-1 in those games. I think Tampa wins the South pretty easily. I think San Francisco takes the West, and then Philly is the first wild card team. The other 2 are going to be tight, but I am going to go Seattle and the New York Giants, I think, round out the NFC playoffs.
And who would have thought, like we were talking about Seattle as one of those teams that surprised people. Who would have thought? Like
Crazy.
They lost their quarterback. They have no running back, all this kind of, and now they're 6-4 sitting great. Like, I don't know where they came from. And, you love it when one of those things happens to a team that you just don't expect. As a future bettor, it either kills you or doesn't, because it just came out of the blue. But, I kind of like Seattle. I don't really like Pete Carroll. But I realized that I didn't like Seattle more because of Russell Wilson. And now that he's gone, I'm kind of on this, not a bandwagon, but I don't mind them. I think what they're doing is cool and special and something that, I enjoy watching.
Yeah.
We'll quickly get into, we'll put all three of these together. We have this, again, we're really early, but Super Bowl odds. We have some MVP talk and then possible defensive player of the year talk, but it looks like that might be running away, but there might be good value on other players. So to begin, Super Bowl favorites, Kansas City right now is tied with Buffalo. Philly's at plus 550. The Niners are fourth best at plus 700. Cowboys plus 1,000. Ravens plus 11,000. Plus 1,100. It's kind of right what I was expecting. I thought Buffalo would drop a little bit, honestly. I think Kansas City has kind of emerged now as the best team in the league. So to see that they're tied is, it's still early. It's not surprising, but I would have thought Buffalo would be a little lower. Philly, I think, might continue to drop at that plus 550. I think that's a terrible buy right now. And then the Niners also, I think everyone kind of has the same thought process as us, thinking that they're going to go on this run. They kind of shown with their offensive skill that they can do this. But I also think the Niners at plus 700 is a really bad buy, because I think you can probably get that lower if you wait a little bit. Where I think the value here is, as you said, I know you're high on them, the Cowboys plus 1,000. I don't think the Ravens are going to do much. It's interesting to talk about the Titans plus 3,000, the Bengals plus 2,500. And I'm not going to say the Bucks, because I don't think the Bucks are going to win it. But there's those three picks there. Cowboys obviously is the most legit one. But again, Cincy is really close to figuring out if they get Jamar Chase back, they can very well get into that game like they did last year. And then the Titans, I know they struggle in the playoffs. They're the team that can't win a playoff game, but plus 3,000 might be worth a dabble right now, just because they find ways to win. And, the weather gets worse as we go later in the season, and they're just a cold weather football team. So it would be worth a sprinkle. I don't think anything right now at the top is tasty enough. Obviously, I think Kansas City deserves to be the heavy favorite, but a lot can still happen. What are your initial thoughts on these Super Bowls? And I know you're probably going to say the Cowboys, but are there any other teams that are jumping out the page to you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm quite active in the futures market. I probably bet at least one future every single week of the NFL season. So I actually do have quite a bit of good value with a lot of these teams. I have San Francisco, I believe, at 23-1. I have Dallas at 13-1. I have Buffalo 7-1, Kansas City 10-1. So I am pretty heavily involved with future Super Bowl futures. I don't think there's much value in the AFC, simply because I don't see it being anybody other than Buffalo or Kansas City.
Right.
So Titans, I mean, yeah, at plus 3,000, it's intriguing, but I don't see how they get past both Buffalo and Kansas City. So I would be looking at NFC, and I do think plus 700 for San Fran is a little bit low. So yeah, I think Dallas at this point still holds the best value odds wise in the Super Bowl market. I actually do have a Super Bowl prediction for you. I do think Buffalo beats Dallas in the Super Bowl. I'll even give you a score: 31-20 is my
31-20. You heard it here first. Dallas
my prediction.
Over Buffalo.
Buffalo over Dallas.
Buffalo over Dallas.
Yep.
Oh,
Buffalo
okay.
over Dallas.
Buffalo over Dallas. That's not hitting now. Dallas is winning 31-20 over Buffalo. Okay,
Yep.
Buffalo over Dallas 31-20.
That's my
I love it.
Yep.
I'm gonna add on to that. I'm gonna go. Oh boy, I'm gonna be really weird here. I'm gonna go Titans over the Niners, 17-16.
Ooh.
Titans Niners 17-16 in a good old blood battle, ground and pound game.
King Henry MVP.
You know, I'm gonna give it to. Yeah, I guess you got to give it to Henry. If they have no other offense, but Titans, yeah, I don't know. I'm high on. I know they can't win a playoff game and save their life, but I don't know why I like them this year. I just like them, and I think that you got to hope for bad weather games, in my opinion, as a Tennessee. If you're rooting for Tennessee, just because they thrive in cold weather games, but
for sure,
that's just gonna jump out the page. And if that wins, I will be having a new house in Florida with a brand new car. But
Yeah, if that
So
wins, give me all your futures for next year to
yeah,
hop
no,
on.
yeah. MVP odds have kind of shaken up a little bit. Allen, which I believe was either the favorite or close to the favorite with Mahomes, has now dropped quite a bit at plus 700. This is according to DraftKings as of this morning. Mahomes holds the heavy favorite at minus 150. Tua's at plus 500. Hurts is at plus 550. And Burrow is plus 1800. I have one play here, and I'm not going to take full credit for it. Um, One of my buddies is a pretty avid gambler, as like you, kind of big into the future game, but he kind of brought out a good stat. Burrow right now is third in um, passing yards and second in passing touchdowns.
Mm.
Um, and as the fifth best on there at plus 1800, I can imagine Tua possibly dropping off a little bit. Hurts has played really well, but he's only getting there with his run game. Allen is very much alive, in my opinion. I think Allen's really good value, and obviously Mahomes is a favorite for a reason. But I think Burrow at that high with the stats he has right now, I think is really worth at least a sprinkle. And Allen's dropped a little bit. I think he's at a really good position as well right now. Dropping quite kind of falling off with that the couple bad games, the elbow injury. I think they're those two, in my opinion, are the best odds right now for the best bang for your buck. Obviously, Mahomes is probably going to be the play. But yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't hate that play at all on Burrow. My only concern is I touched on it a little bit earlier. The end of Cincinnati's schedule is pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So if he kind of blows up and doesn't get the stats that we're kind of used to seeing from him, it could kind of tank his MVP odds. But 18-1 at this point in the season, yeah, I think that's definitely a value play. I actually do like Josh Allen. I believe 7-1
Yep.
for his current odds. He's just too good of a player. And this is probably the best you're going to get with him. So
Yeah.
I do kind of like Allen. Once again, I don't have as many MVP futures as I do Super Bowl, but I have gotten kind of lucky to have some guys up there. I do have Jalen Hurts at 30-1. I actually have a Kirk Cousins at 50-1, which I'm not banking on, but yeah, his odds are better than that now. I got Tua at 50-1. I came back, took Hurts again at 10-1. And I actually took Kirk one more time at 25-1. So I'm kind of hoping it's one of those guys. I do think Jalen or Tua, just depending on how the top two dogs, Mahomes and Allen, do, I do think they have a shot. But yeah, at this point, if they stay healthy, I mean, I think Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, is going to be kind of tough not to give them the award this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's great. You got Tua and Hurts at really good lines there because I think Tua's undefeated for a game he's played all the way through as of now. And, scary injury to start the season, but he's looked really good. Obviously, Hurts has been a big factor in Philly's success. So those are, really good odds for those two guys. But again, it's really hard to beat that Mahomes or Allen. They're just too good of teams, too good of passers. But yeah, it should be interesting to see how that ravels. So I'm glad we touched on that. Defensive player of the year is kind of running away right now. Micah Parsons minus 310. I do want to bring up, as both of us are Michigan boys, as the state of Michigan, we have two Michigan players that went to college in Michigan schools. We have Matt Judon, who I actually played against in college, went to Grand Valley State, your alma mater, I believe.
Yep.
He's plus 550 right now. It's second in the defensive player of the year race. And then we have Max Crosby, who's fourth in the race, who went to Eastern Michigan. So kind of, we had to show some light. Obviously, Michigan might be a better sports team than you think. Sports state. Everyone talks about Ohio, Florida, Texas. But two Michigan men on there. Yeah, playing against Judon, he was one hell of a player, and he's had a great NFL season. NFL career, actually. He looks unbelievable out there. He's a sack machine, fast and just really able. And, at Grand Valley, who is number one right now, I believe, in the Division II playoffs. But he was just a beast there. So I think Micah's going to run away with it, just about from his, coverage he gets in the media. But, and he's, his motor is just crazy. And then obviously his first play of the game last week, strip sack, and he just has too much media attention for a very media driven award, that I think it's hard to bet against him. Obviously minus 310 is nothing I'm going to put money on.
Right.
but I have a hard time seeing anyone else winning it but him.
Yep, I agree. I'm going to toot my own horn here one last time. I do have a Micah Parsons 6-1 ticket for defensive player of the year. I took it week 1 after TJ Watt went down. So that one's looking pretty good. However, I do think Judon, this could be a homer pick. As you mentioned, I am a Grand Valley is my alma mater, but he currently has 13 sacks on the season, which is 3 more than Parsons, who is second closest. And he's averaging 1.3 sacks per game this season. If he continues that pace, he's on pace for 22.1. The current NFL record is 22.5. So
Okay.
if he breaks that single season sacks record, or if Parsons does miss a game or two, whether he gets benched because Dallas has their playoff spot locked up, or if he gets banged up a little bit, we did see him bang up his knee a little bit in this past game. I think Judon could have a real chance at winning this award. So I don't know if it's a homer pick. Judon is just a fantastic player. He is very under the radar. He doesn't get the media coverage like you had mentioned that Parsons constantly gets. But yeah, I do think if you kind of want to take a risk and get a worthy bet of a defensive player of the year, I think Judon is worth a shot.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in that. And I'm not sure the stats of the histories of DPOY, but I would have to imagine coming from a small college, D2 college, that he would probably be one of the first to win that award. So that's an interesting story to keep in mind. And I can always hold that I played against that behemoth of a man. So we'll get into our little ending segment here. We have our best bets of the weekend, but before we get into that, we'll recap our not so great performance last week. So each week we do 5 bets. We do our most confident play. We do our favorite under, our favorite over, our favorite underdog, and then our favorite team that's supposed to win. So last week we both went 2 and 3, but I'm going to give the edge to Ethan because his most confident play did hit in the Dallas money line. You were high on that one and it paid off. Dallas absolutely blew him out of the water. It was a disgusting game for Minnesota, and there's a reason that's the most confident play you had because it wasn't even a question. So I'm going to give you the win, although we had the same record just because of that confident play. We both kind of got screwed on the Giants game. I had that as my most confident under at 40, or my most confident play was the under of 45 in that one. And again, that's kind of a game that you had that as your under. We thought that one was going to, go soaring under. It kept us in the game a little bit, then just got blown on the water. So very bad luck to start my most confident play with a bet that really did not end very close. Your other win, you did take the over in the Browns and the Bills. Thankfully, that game was moved to Ford Field. And I believe that one, I gave the over at the original line at 42.5, but even if you took the over at 51, you still would have hit. So that was a good win there. And I think my best win of the week was the under in the Jets and the Pats. I had the under at 38. That game ended in 13 points. 13 points. But yeah, not a great week for either of us. Do you have anything to add on your performance or my performance of last week?
Yeah, like you said, not a great week for either of us. Very disappointed the Indy money line couldn't get there. We already touched on it earlier in the show, but they had it until they didn't. So disappointed I couldn't get there with the 7-point underdog this week. Denver also looked pretty good until it didn't. Right. So I think we were close overall. I'm glad Cleveland Buffalo, the adjusted line at Ford Field, still ended up hitting because I would feel like I had cheated had that not hit. So happy that one got there. And I think let's just focus on this week. I think we could both do better.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll get into this week, and I will start my most confident play. And I touched on it earlier here, and I just got to stay true to my word and true to how much of an impact game this is for both teams. I'm going to take the over in Sunday night's game between Green Bay and the Eagles. I just think there's too much on the line. Again, I'm not going to, reiterate what I said before, but there's just too much on the line. I have a hard time seeing this game going under just because of, what each team needs to do. It is kind of high. I believe it's at 45.5. I still think that's going to go over. Again, you said briefly that he could see both these teams scoring 30 points. But yeah, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, so kind of touched on this one as well. Tennessee money line is going to be my most confident bet. Just think it's an absolutely horrible spot for Cincinnati. Tennessee is proven in this spot that they can win these tough AFC matchups at home. And I think Derrick Henry kind of does what Nick Chubb did to this Cincinnati defense, just kind of runs all over them and puts points on the board. So yeah, give me Tennessee money line, most confident play this week.
I love that.
And I believe that is plus 110.
Yeah, it's an underdog as well. So that's an interesting play. I actually love that play. I think Tennessee is looking good. And again, we're reiterating the predicament that Cincy's in with just what's on the horizon. And yeah, I really like Tennessee's spot in that play. I'll let you go to the next two. What's your favorite under and the over of the week?
Yeah, so the under was tough for me this week. I found myself kind of leaning to a lot of overs. So I don't love this play. But I think Pittsburgh Indy is going to be my under 39. I could see this being like a 20-17 game. I think TJ Watt being back could really give Indy trouble offensively. I could see Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris kind of just pounding the rock both on both sides and just really run that clock. And they could essentially run out of time before they can run up the score. So give me the under Pittsburgh Indy. And then over, I'm going to go back to the well, Tennessee Cincinnati. I just really like that over. I think it could get up towards 50. Like I said, I think the Browns beat Cincinnati 32-13. And I could see a similar game for Tennessee this week.
I will start on the under, and it's going to go completely against what you just said. My under of the week is that same game, Cincinnati, Tennessee. I'm taking it under 42.5, I believe is what it is, or whatever it's at. Whatever it's at, I'm taking the under.
Yep, 42.5.
42.5. I'm really confident that Tennessee is going to win this game, like you said, as your most confident play. I can see them winning this, even with their, success on the ground. I think they're going to waste too much time on the clock. And I think it's going to be like a 20 to, 13 games, something like 20 to 14 games, something like that, where I just think, and again, I think the over makes too much sense there with Cincy's high power offense, Tennessee's, success on the run game. I just think the over is too obvious in my opinion. I think it's kind of a trap. So I'm gonna go for the under in that game. I know it's completely contradicting you, but that can be a fun little wager between me and you in that game.
For sure.
My over, I don't really love it, but I'm gonna take San Fran and the Saints over 43. Seeing how San Fran played last week, the 49ers offense is unreal. I could see them scoring like 38 once again in this game. And, the Saints defense is pretty bad. They give up, I believe, like 24 points on average, which isn't great. But they also can find ways to score. And I think if they get, into the red zone, they're going to end up putting the ball in the end zone as opposed to the field goal. So I could see them, getting 14 in like a 38-14 game. So I like the over of 43 in that. Again, it's not super appealing just because of, how both those teams play. But I think it's a game where the Niners are going to win pretty big and hopefully score quite a bit of points. My underdog, I have 3 plays on this same game. So my underdog is that Tennessee money line. I know that's your most confident play. I'm going to take them at the underdog. You get said plus 110. I just think there's no way they lose this game, in my opinion. I think they're going to win, as I said, hopefully in that 17-10 range in the final score. So that's my underdog. And I realize I've just taken two out of the same game, but still very high on the Titans this week and think they're a really good underdog.
Yeah, we'll probably be talking back and forth during that game, seeing as we both have 2 plays on it. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited for that total now that you're differentiating from me.
We'll have to figure out something that the loser does here.
Yeah, we'll do something on the show and
yeah,
figure something out. My underdog, I'm trying to be ballsy again. I do kind of like this play though. I like Arizona. I think
Okay.
Arizona on the money line. We didn't talk about this game. They're plus 190. I believe they're a 4.5 point dog against the Chargers. Arizona is at home. I know they don't have a great home field advantage. I just think it's somewhat of a bad spot for the Chargers, even though they really need as many wins as they can get. But they are coming off that game with the Chiefs. They do have another division rival, Raiders, on deck in Las Vegas. So that's going to be a bigger game, although I don't think they're going to necessarily overlook Arizona. I do think, though, Arizona does have a chance to win outright. I think they get Kyler Murray back. They were just
Okay.
completely embarrassed on Monday Night Football. And I think with Kyler and D Hop, they're just a different team than they are with Colt McCoy. Even though McCoy is not a horrible backup, but Murray just adds a completely different aspect to that offense. So
For sure.
yeah, it's probably going to be ugly, but give me Arizona money line for my underdog.
Okay. I like it. And then let me get your last one, your favorite of the week.
Yep. So my favorite, I'm going to go back to Tampa Bay.
Okay.
I'm going to do the 2-unit money line play for Tampa. Just don't see how they lose to the Browns. Don't really have much more to add. We kind of dug pretty deep into this game already, but awkward spot for the Browns. I think Tampa's a bet on team coming off a bye. So yeah, give me Tampa.
Yeah, I think that's a great play. I have a really hard time seeing that one losing. My favorite is a really, really weird line here. I'm taking Baltimore money line. They're playing at Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville's they have that weird record at when they're playing at home, but it's still Jacksonville, and they're only a 3.5 point underdog in this game, which is kind of mind blowing to me. Baltimore, they had a weird game last week against the Panthers, kind of scaping by. But it's just it's 100% a trap line. So I avoided, in my mind, a trap in this Tennessee Titan over. So I'm going to fall for the trap and take Baltimore money line over the Jags. It's a game where I'm thinking the spread should be in the 6.5 to 7 point range, and it's only at 3.5. Just really weird, and it was too weird not to take Baltimore in this game. So I think Baltimore is still a pretty good team. They've struggled at times. It really all depends how Lamar is going to play. He's either great or he's a turnover machine. So, yeah, I don't love it, but that's just kind of even out my traps of the weekend. So I think we have a really good opportunity here to at least go better than 2-3 for both of us.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I do like that Baltimore play from you. I'm hoping the line is low just because of how bad Baltimore looked against Carolina last week, because I probably will get involved on that money line as well. So yeah, I'm hoping they don't get upset and just lay another egg against Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's just a weird line and one that's kind of confusing to me. So I'm going to fall for that one, and hopefully it pays off.
Yep.
So we're wrapping up here. You have anything else to add before we close out for the week?
Not really. Like we kind of mentioned in the opening, just a great couple of days of football. Obviously a full slate for Thanksgiving, Friday, just a ton of college football. If anyone's into high school football, we got high school state championships this week. And then obviously all day Saturday, all day Sunday, just great football weekend. So looking forward to watching football, just spending time with friends and family, eating good food, and yeah, hopefully cashing some bets along the way.
Yeah, I love that. Big couple games for Michigan this weekend. Michigan, Ohio State in the game, probably the biggest game of my life, one would say. So I will probably be on nerve all weekend watching that one. I was debating going down to Columbus, but I think I'm going to take the pass on that one. But big weekend and everything. We have a huge Thanksgiving, huge college football rivalry week. And then, yeah, high school football is going around everywhere. So great time to be alive. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great Thanksgiving. Go Blue, go Lions, and
Go
God
Spartans,
bless.
need that bowl game.
Spartans, yeah, Spartans one win away from a bowl. They are 12th in basketball, so you have that going for you.
Hey,
Big jump in the polls.
Basketball school.
Yes. All righty. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, you too, man. Thank you.